Let me ask you something. What if the reason you're struggling financially has nothing to do with how much you earn? What if two people living on the same street, in the same neighborhood, paying similar rent, could have completely opposite financial lives? Not because of luck, not because of a raise, but because of a single decision they made about how they live. My name is Daniel, and together we're going to uncover the financial patterns most people never see, starting right here. Picture two apartments. Same city, same neighborhood, similar rent. The first apartment belongs to someone earning $95,000 a year. Walk inside, and you'll see a 75-inch television mounted on the wall, a leather sectional that cost $4,000, a kitchen packed with appliances, most still in their original boxes, closets overflowing with clothes, many still tagged, a spare bedroom that became a storage unit for things nobody touches anymore. This person opens their banking app every morning with a knot in their stomach, 2 missed paychecks, and everything falls apart. Now walk into the second apartment. This one belongs to someone earning $52,000 a year, nearly half the income. Inside, you'll notice something different immediately. Space, a modest couch, a reasonably sized TV, a kitchen with exactly the tools that actually get used, a closet with clothes that actually get worn. And the spare bedroom? It's a bedroom. This person opens their banking app with calm confidence. They have 18 months of expenses saved. They invest 20% of every paycheck, without fail. Same neighborhood. The person earning almost half as much has nearly 10 times the financial security. So what is going on here? This isn't a story about income. It's a story about a hidden relationship between stuff and money that most people spend their entire lives never understanding. The first person isn't reckless. They don't gamble. They don't have expensive addictions. They just quietly, gradually built a lifestyle that needs every single dollar they earn just to stay standing, like a house of cards. The second person discovered something that changed everything. They learned that owning less doesn't mean living worse. It means living deliberately, and deliberate living creates financial breathing room that most high earners never experience. Today, I, Daniel, am going to walk you through the minimalist money rules that separate people who always have money from people who never do, regardless of income. These aren't rules about suffering or going without. They're about understanding something most people miss entirely, that every single object you own has ongoing costs you've probably never sat down to calculate. Let me start with a concept that will permanently change how you think about every purchase you make for the rest of your life. Everything you own costs you money twice. The first cost is obvious. It's the price tag, the number on the receipt. Done. But there's a second cost that most people completely ignore, and it's often larger than the first. Think about a treadmill. Let's say it cost $800. That's the first cost. But a treadmill takes up roughly 20 square feet when you account for clearance space. In most urban areas, space costs between $30 and $50 per square foot annually. So that treadmill is quietly costing you $600 to $1,000 every single year just to sit there. And here's a real-life example Daniel wants you to sit with. A friend of mine bought a $30,000 boat a few years ago. He used it maybe 4 or 5 times the first summer, twice the second, and barely at all after that. But what he didn't count was the $3,000 a year in maintenance, winterization, insurance, registration, and storage fees. The boat cost him $30,000 to buy and nearly $15,000 to own over 5 years for something he barely touched. That's the second cost. And it doesn't stop there. There's a third dimension to the second cost that almost nobody talks about: mental energy. Every item you own occupies a tiny slice of your attention. It needs to be cleaned, organized, maintained, insured, worried about, and eventually disposed of. Researchers have found that visual clutter actually increases cortisol, the stress hormone, and reduces the brain's ability to focus. Your stuff is literally stressing you out in ways you can't consciously feel. And then there's opportunity cost. That $15,000 home gym setup sitting in your spare room, that could have been $15,000 in index funds, growing to $50,000 or more over 15 years. You didn't just buy a home gym. You bought a home gym instead of future financial freedom. When you add it all up, many possessions cost more to own than they ever cost to buy. Minimalists aren't avoiding nice things because they're miserable people. They've just done the math and decided most things simply aren't worth it. Which brings us to Rule 1.
Rule 1. Calculate cost per use before every purchase. Before you buy anything, ask yourself, how many times will I realistically use this? Then divide the total cost by that number. That's your cost per use, and it's the only honest measure of value. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wear. The more expensive jacket is actually cheaper in any meaningful sense. Think about that $300 kitchen gadget you've been eyeing. If you use it twice a year, that's $150 per use. That's an obscenely expensive way to make guacamole. But a $2,000 mattress used every single night for 10 years, that works out to about 55 cents per use. Extraordinary value for something directly affecting your health and energy every day. This one calculation destroys most impulse purchases on contact. It cuts through marketing, emotion, and social pressure and reveals what actually makes financial sense versus what just feels good in the moment. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you already own. Here's something Daniel wants you to try this week. Walk through your home and look at each item you own. Then ask yourself one honest question. If this item disappeared today, would I spend money to replace it? Would you actually replace that fondue set? That bread maker collecting dust in the back of the cabinet? Those clothes you haven't worn in 18 months? For most items, if you're being really honest, the answer is no. These things exist in your life through inertia, not intention. They were impulse buys, gifts you felt obligated to keep, or leftovers from hobbies and phases you've long moved past. These items have negative value. They cost you space, mental energy, and time without providing anything in return. Every hour spent organizing, cleaning around, or thinking about things you wouldn't replace is an hour stolen from things that actually matter. Sell what has value. Donate what someone else could use. Discard what serves nobody. The process feels uncomfortable at first. Then it feels liberating. Rooms feel larger, decisions feel simpler, cleaning takes half the time, and you always know where everything is, because everything that's left actually has a purpose. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. Here's a pattern Daniel sees constantly among people who earn solid incomes but have almost nothing to show for it. They upgrade perfectly functional items simply because they're bored or because a newer version exists. Their TV works perfectly, but the new model has slightly better contrast. Their phone runs every app they need, but the new release has a marginally improved camera. Their car gets them from A to B without issue, but the neighbor just pulled up in something shinier. These upgrades feel like progress. They're actually wealth destruction dressed up as progress. Think about this. The average American replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, often while the previous phone still works perfectly. Over 30 years, that pattern alone costs $30,000 to $50,000 in completely unnecessary purchases. Apply that logic across every category where upgrade culture operates. Cars, furniture, appliances, clothing, and the lifetime waste easily exceeds $200,000. The rule is simple. Never replace something that still functions. Boredom is not a malfunction. Desire for novelty is not a malfunction. A newer option existing is not a malfunction. Actual breakdown is a malfunction. Everything else is just marketing convincing you to solve problems you don't actually have. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance. If spending is easy and saving is hard, you'll spend. If saving is easy and spending is hard, you'll save. It really is that simple. Minimalists don't rely on willpower. Willpower runs out, especially when you're tired, stressed, or emotionally drained. Instead, they engineer their environment so the right choice is always the easy choice. Spending friction looks like removing stored credit card numbers from online retailers, deleting shopping apps from your phone, unsubscribing from every promotional email, and committing to a 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase. Saving ease looks like automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, keeping minimal cash in your checking account, and treating your savings contribution exactly like a fixed bill, non-negotiable. Here's a real number worth remembering. The 24-hour waiting rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases. Most desires for objects simply fade within a day if you don't act on them immediately. You don't need more discipline. You need better systems. Rule 5. Count your possessions regularly. I know, this sounds extreme, but stay with me because this one is more powerful than it sounds. Counting forces awareness, and awareness prevents accumulation. Pick one category right now. How many shirts do you own? Guess first, then go count. Most people discover they have 3 or 4 times what they estimated. How many kitchen gadgets? How many pairs of shoes? How many items in your junk drawer that you couldn't even name without looking? Once you know you own 47 shirts, buying number 48 feels different. The absurdity becomes visible, and that visibility alone dramatically slows down acquisition. Minimalists set maximum thresholds. Maybe 30 items of clothing, maybe 15 books at any given time, maybe a one-in, one-out rule, where any new purchase requires removing something that already exists. Without intentional limits, possessions expand to fill whatever space is available. With limits, every new addition requires a conscious decision, and that friction alone changes everything.
Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. Most items people purchase get used intensively for a short window, and then rarely, if ever, again. The excitement of newness fades, the enthusiasm cools, and the item quietly joins the collection of things owned but never touched. Before committing to ownership, test the interest. Want to get into camping? Rent equipment for the first 2 or 3 trips. Want to try woodworking? Borrow tools or use a local makerspace. Want a kayak? Rent several times before you spend $800 on one that ends up in your garage. Renting first does 2 important things. First, it tells you whether the enthusiasm is real or temporary, and many interests fade fast once the novelty wears off. Better to find that out while renting than after buying equipment that collects dust for years. Second, it teaches you exactly what you need. First-time campers almost always buy the wrong things. Renting lets you learn before you commit. When you eventually do buy, you buy precisely what's necessary. Closets and garages across the world are filled with dusty evidence of abandoned hobbies. Ski equipment, photography gear, guitar amps. Minimalists don't become museums of past enthusiasm. They test before they invest. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Here's something that catches almost everyone off guard. Every major possession you buy doesn't come alone. It brings friends. A boat requires a trailer, a hitch-equipped vehicle, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, and appropriate clothing. A home gym requires flooring, mirrors, storage solutions, and often renovations to make the space usable. A motorcycle requires gear, storage, maintenance equipment, and often a truck or trailer to transport it to riding locations. That boat isn't a $30,000 purchase. It's a $30,000 purchase plus an ecosystem of supporting costs that can push the true price to $45,000 or $50,000 before you've spent a single weekend on the water. Minimalists always calculate the full ecosystem cost before any major purchase. They know that a $5,000 item might actually represent $8,000 or $12,000 once every multiplier is accounted for. And here's the good news. The multiplier works in reverse too. When you eliminate one major possession, you often eliminate an entire category of related expenses. Sell the boat and you also eliminate the storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, and towing costs. The savings ripple outward far beyond the item itself. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning. Here's the trap that catches high earners constantly. They never define what enough looks like. So income increases, lifestyle upgrades, the new lifestyle becomes the new normal, and they need another increase just to feel like they're moving forward. The goalpost keeps moving, indefinitely. Daniel has seen this firsthand. People earning $300,000 feel just as financially stressed as people earning $80,000 because their expectations and expenses expanded alongside their income. The number got bigger, but the feeling never changed. Minimalists break this cycle by defining enough in advance. They decide what kind of home is sufficient, what kind of car meets their actual needs, what level of comfort constitutes genuine satisfaction, and then they earn toward that target instead of constantly moving it. This might mean deciding that a $350,000 home is enough even if you could eventually afford $600,000, that a $30,000 car is enough even when colleagues drive $70,000 vehicles. Defining enough creates a finish line, and once you reach it, every additional dollar of income flows directly to saving and investing rather than consumption. The person who defined enough at $60,000 of annual spending and then started earning $150,000 builds wealth at an extraordinary rate. That $90,000 gap goes straight to financial freedom every single year. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. The conventional view of wealth is all about what you have: the house, the car, the possessions, the visible markers of success. But Daniel wants you to consider a different measure entirely. True wealth is measured by what you can choose. Can you leave a job that's destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off to handle a family emergency without financial panic? Can you start a business without a guaranteed income? Can you retire before 65?
Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but compromise your values? These choices are only available to people who've built a real gap between their income and their expenses. The person earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost zero optionality. They're chained to their income requirement. One disruption and everything falls apart. The person earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 has extraordinary optionality. They can absorb disruptions. They can take risks. They can make decisions based on what they actually want, not what they're financially forced to do. Every purchase you make isn't just an exchange of money for an object. It's a trade of optionality for possession. And the question worth asking before every significant purchase is this: is this item worth reducing my ability to make free choices about my own life? Sometimes the answer is yes. More often, it's no. Rule 10. Practice cyclical decluttering rather than annual purging. Most people who try minimalism do one big dramatic purge, feel incredible for a few weeks, and then slowly, almost invisibly, accumulate right back to where they started. Within 2 years, they're back to square one. The problem isn't the purge. The problem is doing it once. Cyclical decluttering means small, regular reviews instead of one overwhelming annual event. A weekly glance at incoming items. A monthly evaluation of one specific category. A quarterly check on overall accumulation trends. Removing 3 items per week is manageable, sustainable, and invisible in effort. Removing 300 items once a year feels overwhelming and usually gets postponed indefinitely. Regular reviews also create something more valuable than a clean space. They create awareness. You start noticing patterns. You see which categories tend to grow. You recognize which emotional states tether spending. You identify which marketing tactics work specifically on you. That self-awareness enables prevention, not just treatment. So here's how Daniel suggests you actually put this into practice, starting today. This week, walk through your home with the replacement test. Identify 10 items you would not replace if they disappeared. Sell, donate, or discard them. Notice how it feels. This month, implement the 24-hour rule for every non-essential purchase. Track how many desires survive the waiting period versus how many simply evaporate. The data will surprise you. This quarter, count your possessions in 3 categories that tend to accumulate. Clothing, kitchen items, and entertainment or media are good starting points. Set a maximum threshold for each based on what you actually use. This year, define what enough looks like across your major spending categories. What home is sufficient? What transportation is adequate? What wardrobe meets your genuine needs? Write these definitions down. Refer back to them when temptation arises. The financial transformation that comes from applying these rules consistently compounds over time. Someone who follows them for 5 years accumulates substantially less while saving substantially more. The gap between their lifestyle and their income creates wealth that simply cannot be built any other way. Here's something nobody tells you about minimalism and money. The relationship runs in both directions. Owning less creates more money. But having more money also makes owning less feel completely natural. When your savings account is growing and your investments are compounding, the urge to accumulation begins to fade. The psychological need that drives most consumption, the need for security and status, gets satisfied by financial strength rather than physical possessions. You stop needing the stuff to feel successful, because your bank account is already telling you the story you want to hear. People trapped in consumption cycles often can't explain why they keep buying.
The truth is usually that spending temporarily fills an emotional void that financial insecurity creates. Address the insecurity through real financial strength, and the compulsion to spend often dissolves on its own. This creates a virtuous cycle. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more creates security. Security reduces the emotional drive to spend. Reduced spending accelerates saving further. Each turn reinforces the next. The opposite cycle is equally powerful, but destructive. Spending everything creates insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary relief. More spending deepens the insecurity. The cycle continues until some external shock forces a breaking point. The choice between these two cycles determines your financial trajectory more than your income ever could. High earners trapped in the destructive cycle build nothing. Modest earners riding the virtuous cycle build everything. Remember those two apartments at the beginning? The one belonging to the person earning $52,000 with 18 months of savings? That person didn't get there through exceptional income. They got there through exceptional clarity about what actually matters. The other apartment, the one belonging to the person earning $95,000 who is 2 paychecks from crisis, belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more stuff equals a better life. Both of those lifestyles are available to you right now, regardless of what you currently earn. The choice is simply whether you want to own your possessions or whether you're comfortable letting your possessions own you. The math strongly favors the first option. So does the peace of mind. If this gave you a new way of looking at money and the stuff in your life, hit subscribe because this is exactly what the income model framework is built on. Every video Daniel brings you is designed to show you the financial patterns hiding in plain sight, so you can make decisions that actually move the needle. I'll see you in the next one.